Pranam Swamiji.
Namaste.
Tell
us your name.
My name is Amol. I came across a TED talk a few years back from a lady called Jill Bolt Taylor, who was a brain scientist, and she experienced a stroke. And in the experience of the stroke, she has written a book, Accidental Stroke, I don't know if you are aware. And the things she mentioned were very similar. She experienced a like a oneness, a blissful experience, and it took her about 8 years to come out of that experience. So my question, if I may say, is it a physiological experience, this experience of oneness?
Right. Good question. And it's a famous thing. It's one of the most popular TED Talks. I think she had a stroke because she is trained as a brain scientist. She immediately recognized that it's a stroke. And for a time, she felt the boundaries of the individual self dissolving. And she felt one with the universe. And pretty happy about it, like a blissful experience. See, here is the beauty of Advaita. I want to use this question. Good question. I want to use this to stress the beauty of Advaita. The moment you say you have an experience like that, and such experiences have been had by mystics throughout the ages, in all religions, extraordinary experiences, and we can get it also. The problem with this kind of experience is it can be doubted. Why can it be doubted? First of all, it's not a common experience. Only somebody is having it. It's a peculiar experience. Somebody is having it. And if you have a unique experience like that, others don't have it, you can doubt it in many ways. For example, this one. So here, clearly there was some problem in the brain, like a stroke. And that had the effect of making that lady feel, I am one with everything. That's what happened. A neuroscientist will say, I don't doubt you are feeling one. You are feeling one with everything. But that does not mean you are one with everything. That feeling one with everything is coming because of the brain. Because of the brain. You have the stroke in the brain. That's why you're getting this feeling of, I am one with everything. So a neuroscientist can doubt such experiences. And not only neuroscience. You don't have to come to modern neuroscience. You can go to ancient times also. From ancient times till today. How did the general public react to mystical experiences? The immediate reaction was, pagal hai. Most mystics, they were dismissed as, they're crazy. What did most people think about Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar? That mad Brahmin of Dakshineshwar. He claims that he is seeing Ma Kali, vision. So mystical experiences can be doubted. The result of that, one way of verifying whether it's a genuine mystical experience or not, it must be transformative. It must be life-changing. It must be permanent. It must leave you, let's say, enlightened. That paradigm shift and ethical manifestation. After the mystical experience also I have a whole list of problems, maybe more problems now. Then you can doubt whether that mystical experience is a real mystical experience or a stroke in the brain, or if you go where I live, evening, around this time, if you step outside the ashram, many are having mystical experiences. You are lucky. Here in Singapore, it's strictly prohibited by law. New York, just the opposite. It has, 2 years ago, they made it legal. So outside the ashram, you will find people are, they are high. And they are having mystical experiences, or some experiences. So, but what happens after that? Are their problems solved? Not at all. They are worse. And drug use does not solve their problems. It leads to degeneration, internal, external. Now, Advaita Vedanta, what would Advaita Vedanta say? Using this, kshetra. What will Krishna say to that person? Will say, did you feel it? Did you experience it? And she will say, yeah, I experienced it. If you experienced it, that experience is part of the kshetra, it's part of the field. You fiddled around something with the brain, which is part of the field. And then there was another experience generated, which is part of the field. That which is experiencing that, to that consciousness which this feeling of oneness is revealed. See, earlier she did not feel one with the universe. That was one kind of experience. Then she felt one with the universe. Then slowly that experience dissipated. So, all of these are changes in the field. The one which is experiencing these, that one is the knower of the field. In Advaita, it's not a problem at all. Advaita does not depend on extraordinary mystical experiences. Advaita uses experience, but what experience in Advaita do we use? Just our day-to-day experience of field and knower of the field. Seer and seen, just the experience of the body, which everybody has. Just the experience of the mind, which everybody has this experience. That's enough for Advaita. That's why Advaita is simple, but also a little subtle. Difficult to... When we say knower of the field, kshetragya, when we say consciousness, it is that which makes all experience possible, including mystical experiences. Now, if the mystical experience points you back towards the kshetragya, back towards consciousness, good enough. That's the utility of the mystical experience. Don't hold on to that experience. Yeah. Your precise question was, do these experiences have some physiological basis? Anything that is part of the kshetra will have a physiological basis. Because physiology is kshetra. You see how beautifully this matches with Krishna's analysis. She had an experience, and that experience was connected to a stroke in the brain. Krishna will say, your experience is kshetra, your brain is kshetra, and that the two are related. There's no surprise there. Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
We'll take the question from here. Tell us your name and ask the question.
Salutations, Swamiji. My name is Srijit.
Srijit.
I'm standing here because I'm ignorant. Otherwise, I would be sitting there without having any questions. So forgive my ignorance. I have two questions.
Yes.
One is, most likely the answer that you might give, I hope that it's going to be one answer to both. But let me put it. First thing is, the experiencing, that is the awareness of experience that you're talking about, which you relate it to be our divine nature. To me, my consciousness seems to me to be more ordinary than any divine. So I kind of disagree, or I'm ignorant. I kind of disagree that it's our divine nature. I would say it's our ordinary nature. So why divine? Second,
Right.
maybe, would you like to?
Right. You ask the second one also, then I'll respond to it.
Sure. Thank you. So the second question is, you were talking about we are all having the field, basically our bodies, and the knowing with which we know the bodies is basically our nature, and which is one with everything, which is something you call it all encompassing Brahman or whatever. If I'm not so sure that that's the case, because that's where you talked about having faith, faith in God, faith in Ishvara, etc. Now, if that is true, why would Brahman need manifestation? What is the point of having experience? Why don't Brahman just be Brahman and be there?
Okay. So two questions. These are big questions. Very big questions. I always remember, the questions you have to ask these. I remember I did exactly the same thing. I had a question about Madhyamaka Buddhism, Shunyavada, and Advaita Vedanta. And I went straight to the source. In Tibetan Buddhism, Dalai Lama is the head, but there are 4 schools. The Gelugpa, the Sakyapa, the Nyingmapa, and the Kagyupa. The Sakya tradition, their headquarters is in Dehradun, near Dehradun. So their head, so each of these schools has a head. Their hair is called the Sakya Trizin. To cut a long story short, I was visiting, I went to see him, he was sitting in front, very impressive personality, a lot of Tibetans were in line, bowing down to him, getting blessings. So I was a newly minted monk, and I had this question like him. So I went and bowed down, I said, I just have a question. He looked down at me and said, what question? I said, what is the relationship between Nagarjuna's Shunyavada and Shankara's Advaita Vada? He smiled at me and he said, big question, no time. But this question is, what he has asked, Srijit has asked, is important. Two questions. One is, I'll make it very precise, what your question. This consciousness which I feel does not seem divine. It seems natural. All right. I'll make two observations here. First of all, when you say my consciousness, right now what I'm experiencing, it feels natural, nothing divine about it. And that's all our experience all the time. What Krishna would say here is, please distinguish between what you are feeling now, apply that kshetra kshetragya. Whatever is the content of your consciousness, that is part of the field. Consciousness itself is the experiencer of those contents. The consciousness and its contents try to separate. In your understanding, that's all. This is, those who are trained in Western philosophy, there's something called phenomenology. There's a great philosopher, Husserl, who came very close to this. So it does not seem, it seems very natural, very ordinary, because we are just looking at the contents of our mind, which is as daily, whatever is going on in our minds, that's what we are seeing. What is so divine about this? No, the mind in itself is not divine. But that which experiences the mind, there's something extraordinary about that. That which experiences the mind, something extraordinary about that, that consciousness, through the mind experiences the senses, through the mind and senses experiences the body and the external world. That one which does all the experiencing, that one which is the source of all our, what we call, first person experiences. That is extraordinary. That is what Krishna is calling knower of the field, consciousness as such. Now there also, one might say, yeah, but that is also what is divine about it. It's a product of the brain. It's produced by the brain, right? It's natural. It's natural, not divine. Here I will just say, all you have to do is Google this term, the hard problem of consciousness. The hard problem of consciousness. Google it. This is the cutting edge of consciousness research now. They are unable to reduce consciousness to brain activity. If you could show me, it's like a challenge. I'm giving a challenge. If you could show me, not to just my satisfaction, to the satisfaction of generally of scientists, philosophers and doctors, if you could show me how brain is generating consciousness, generating. Causation and correlation are not the same. There's a correlation in brain activity with cognitive events. But causing it, how little bursts of electricity in your brain are giving Srijit the experience of color, light, shape, sound, smell, taste, touch, sense of self. How? How can electricity do that? Nobody knows. Not only nobody knows, nobody has even a faint clue where to begin. If you see, it's a open field now. There are many theories trying to explain this. None of them are coming anywhere close. This is where I say, this is what Advaita Vedanta has been talking about. Krishna is saying this. I quoted, I think, Evan Thompson, his book, Waking, Dreaming, Being. Consciousness studies is not a new field. It started 5,000 years ago in the texts called the Upanishads in ancient India. So this divinity, what we are calling divinity, is not a term that Krishna uses, a term that Vivekananda uses, but it is something which is not natural, which is a product of brain activities. Okay. However, all our experiences require two things, consciousness plus something objective, like the brain activity. That's why the feeling of oneness with the person who had a stroke, there was something in the brain and consciousness experiencing that. The second part of your question, I can't resist answering it. It's a very, very big question, no time. Why, if consciousness is the only reality, How do we know it's the same consciousness? There are a lot of arguments, no time now, but I could give you. This is an ancient argument between Advaita and Sankhya. Sankhya says many consciousnesses. Advaita says one consciousness. Why? And there are arguments. But your direct question, why would Brahman need to manifest as anything at all? Why can't Brahman consciousness be just consciousness? It's like saying, here is a movie screen. Why does it need to manifest as movies? It can just be a blank screen. But then you will complain, what a useless movie screen. Does not show any movies. Kuch to dikha de yaar. Some comedy, tragedy, something show me. If it is showing, you will complain, why it is showing movies? It should remain as a screen. Now it's the very potentiality of the screen that it can appear as movies, or it need not appear. It can be a blank screen also. Similarly, that's exactly what Brahman is doing. In our day-to-day activities, you have waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. In waking and dreaming, consciousness has objects of experience. In deep sleep, blank, no object of experience. We say Brahman has created projected this entire universe. Srishti, Sthiti, Pralaya. So when Srishti and Sthiti are there, universe is there. Consciousness has got objects. In Pralaya, nothing is there. Consciousness alone. As Saguna Brahman. No universe, nothing. Now these are logically the only two alternatives. Both are given to you by Brahman. How can you complain? What else can poor Brahman do? Either it is something or nothing. Both are given by Brahman. But why something like this? When you say, why is it like this? Why Brahman made universe like this and not like that? Then you are entering, my feeling is, these questions are better asked to science. Science will explain it better. Why a particular thing is happening in this way rather than that way. But why existence is there at all? I recommend a book, Srijit. Why does the world exist? Jim Holt. So he's a science writer in New York, and he went around asking this question, why is there anything at all? Your question. Why does the world exist? He went around asking this question to scientists, to physicists, including Penrose, who got the Nobel Prize just 2 years back, I think, to mathematicians, to computer scientists, to philosophers, to theologians. Ask this question, why does anything exist at all? And he has given all the answers from science, philosophy, mathematics. He has put it in one book. Why does the world exist? Densely packed and very nicely written. You can enjoy it. Towards the end of that book, he asks one leading American philosopher. And that philosopher tries to answer this way, that way. Finally, he says, perhaps, the answer is that maybe the ancient Hindus were right. Atman is Brahman. So that's the only place where he mentions Advaita. So that's it. That's what I'll say today. Thank you. Gentleman here. Tell us your name. So can we have that microphone? Maybe it's switched off. Take a look. Tap it. Yes. Tell us your name.
Maharaj, my name is Samrat. My question is not related to today's talk. In one of your earlier lectures, you had mentioned about personal and impersonal God. So my understanding was personal means God with form.
Yes.
But in a recent talk by Swami Medhananda or Maharaj, he was talking about God which is personal but formless. And he mentioned that Sikhism and Islam follows something where God is personal but formless. That got me a bit confused. Can you please explain?
Yes. So in Advaita Vedanta is very clear. What is personal God? That's an English term, personal God. In Advaita Vedanta, this is called Saguna Brahman. Saguna Brahman, Ishvara, Bhagavan, whatever you call it. So the definition is very clear in Advaita Vedanta. Definition is Maya Upahita Chaitanya. Consciousness, which we just discovered, not body, not mind, the witness consciousness, that consciousness associated with the power of Maya is called God. That consciousness plus Maya, or limited by Maya, or inscribed, limited, associated with Maya, is Ishvara. Saguna Brahman. That can be with form, without form. In all the branches of Hinduism where we worship Ishvara with form, Narayana, Vishnu, Shiva, Devi, Ganesha, these are with form. But there if you see the hymns, the stotras, they will also refer to that same Ishvara as formless. Sakara, Nirakara. With this form, with that form, with many forms, with no form. Somebody asked, how can God have a form? God is essentially formless. How can God have a form? It is because God is formless that the God can assume many forms. See, by this analysis, are you, the individual being, do you have a form or not? If you think of yourself as Kshetragya, knower of the field, that has no form. And yet you have a form here. If you as a Jiva you have the capacity of being formless and yet with a form, why cannot Ishvara, who is formless, also assume many forms? So, in Hinduism, God is with form, without form. Sakara and Nirakara. And both of them are the personal God, which is Saguna Brahman or Ishvara. Impersonal is Nirguna Brahman. It's pure consciousness. In Advaita Vedanta, we don't use, the English terms are, it's not precise. Impersonal, personal. In Advaita Vedanta, Nirguna, Saguna, or Gyeya Upasya. Brahman, Parabrahman, Aparabrahman. Gyeya Upasya. Upasya means to be worshipped. You go in the temple there, you have seen Upasya Brahma. Brahman to be worshipped. It's based on faith. You have to establish a relationship with it. With him, her, it. It could be a male form, it could be a female form, it could be without any gender, it could be with a form, human form, non-human form, no form. But what is the characteristics of that? Janmadhyasya yataha. The entire universe is created, preserved and destroyed by a power. A power which we call God. That is the common characteristic of God in any theistic religion. God is the creator of this universe. But the impersonal God which you speak of, which Advaita Vedanta speaks about, is beyond that. Consciousness, let me put it this way, in today's analysis, I can put it this way. Consciousness, in association with one body and mind, you and I and him and her, Jivas. In association with all bodies and mind, entire universe, Ishvara. By itself, that consciousness, Nirguna Brahman. Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahma, Jiva. And Jagat is a product of Saguna Brahman. So this is the idea in Advaita Vedanta. What Ayanma just said is correct. And the impersonal God is the Nirguna Brahman of Advaita Vedanta. That is not usually referred to as God. It is the ultimate reality, pure consciousness. And you are that. God is also that in Advaita Vedanta. Funny story here. One person was asking this same question to a sadhu in the Himalayas. And the sadhu was an Advaitin, a non-dualist. So the person asked, Sakar sach hai, Nirakar sach hai? Is the God with form true or God without form true? And the sadhu convinced him that God actually does not have a form. Finally, that man came back and told the sadhu, the monk, you are right. Sakar, Nirakar hi sach hai. You are right. Formless is true. Nirakar hi sach hai. And the sadhu replied to him, or Sakar tera chacha hai? I'll try to translate into English. Sakar means with form. Chacha means uncle. In English, you have a similar phrase, Bob's your uncle. So, see, this is a mistake to think that either one of them is true. That which is essentially formless can appear in any form. And that which is appearing with form is the same one which is formless. So this is the truth. It is a formless with form, without form. Swami Vivekananda said, we Hindus worship a transcendent, immanent God. Transcendent, beyond space-time causation. God is in Vaikuntha, transcendent, beyond this universe. Immanent, in and through everything. If God is in and through everything, then all these are the forms of God. Ishvara is in all these forms. Krishna himself says, Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. In all these kshetras, I alone am the consciousness shining. Yes.
Thank you.
Gentleman
Pranam
here.
Swamiji,
Namaste.
I am Kishore Shah.
Yes.
For an action, Jivatma is Anumanta.
Just a minute. This is the people who are standing there. We will take those questions quickly, but don't queue up anymore. Don't queue up anymore because we won't have time to take any more questions today. We'll get a chance tomorrow and day after because we'll run out of time otherwise. Sir, please ask the question.
For an action, Jivatma is an Anumanta. And the recipient of the result of the action is also Jivatma. Atma has nothing to do with. So what is the difference between Jivatma and Atma?
Yes. Jivatma and Atma. The Jiva and the Sakshi. The Atma is the Kshetragya which is mentioned here, pure consciousness. Technically, I can give you the definition because these terms are so precise. I can give you the technical definition and I'll try to explain. Technical definition is this. Antakarana upahita chaitanya is Sakshi. Antakarana vishishta chaitanya is Jiva. Mind and body, but mind specially. In the presence of the mind, upadhi is something is in the presence. In the presence of the mind, consciousness becomes the witness of that mind. That is Atma. But when consciousness is identified with a particular mind, that is the Jiva. That is the Jiva. That is the one which transmigrates death of the body. It will go on to other bodies. It will get the results of its past karma. In identification with the mind. Once I am identified with the mind, I will be identified with the body also. And the sukha dukkha of my past karma, which will come to me, will be experienced in the body mind. I am the Jiva. But when I apply what Krishna has said, the body is kshetra, mind is kshetra, I am the witness of body mind, then I am in my nature as Atma or Sakshi. This. Namaste. Gentleman there.
Namaste Swamiji. My name is Nirmal.
Yes.
My question is regarding the decision-making process of our mind.
Yes.
So let's say there are two paths, road 1 and road 2, and we are confident that road 1 is the right path for us, and it seems to be most logical. But after taking that path and moving it along halfway, we think that path 2 or road 2 would have been the better one. So how can we avoid this kind of decision making and make conscious decisions? And is there any divine activity which can help us to become stronger? And
all right, that's enough to be going on with. Just I'll answer the precise question, the decision making activity of the mind. So in Vedanta it's buddhi. And then we call it nishchayatmika buddhi, which comes to a decision. Buddhi is that which comes to a decision. So, two things here. Before making a decision, before taking a decision, I noticed you said logical, but also be psychological. Take your feelings into account. Instead of saying, this is the logical thing to do, I will do this. Logical thing to do, what do my feelings say? If I do this and I don't do that, will I be happy or unhappy? If I do this and don't do that, will I be happy or unhappy? Check with your feelings. Because our power is in the feelings. Understanding is in the logic, but power is in the feelings, the motive power. Often what happens is, I want something, logically I decide to do something else and do that, but then that emotion is not behind that decision. So after some time I don't like it anymore. There's no force behind it, pushing me forward. I recommend a book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Daniel Kahneman, he got the Nobel Prize for it. It is on decision making, the role of emotion and intellect, intuition also, on decision making. Another point I would like to add here is that decision, this is a management professor told me long ago, I still remember, nearly 30 years ago. Decision, what he did was, he wrote ABCD on the board and he said, choose one. So I came and ticked A. This is how decide. Then the professor said, no, not like this. Decision is you tick A, then cross out B, C, D. So decision is saying yes to one thing and no to the others. If the other options are open, when you take a decision and walk down one path, there will be a struggle. And if the other options are open, there is always a temptation to go back to the other options. So if you have taken a proper decision, logical and psychological, everything, you are behind it, you feel you really want this, and it is logical also, then go for it, cut out the rest. Decision, the root of that, you know what it means? It comes from the same root from which caesarean comes, cutting. Caesarean operation, caesare means scissor, to cut. So decision actually does not mean to, we think decision means choosing. Decision means saying no, cutting.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Tell us your name and ask the question.
Hari Om Swamiji, my name is Aarti. My question is, during one of your talks on the Divine Mother, I gathered that Shakti, when it inwardizes, is Shiva, and Shiva, when it turns outwards, is Shakti. So they are one truth. Shiva is the transcendent form and Shakti is the immanent form. So does this mean that Shakti or Maya is an inherent, inbuilt aspect of Brahman, that there is no Brahman without Maya? And is it that this veil of ignorance is as much Brahman as is enlightenment? Or the cosmic cycle of ignorance and enlightenment is just going to repeat itself? And
No more. All right, ask it. Go ahead.
Finally, it's an extension. I was wondering what would happen to the world if everybody became enlightened.
Good questions. Again, the problem is good questions, no time. So I'll give quick answers to it, but I could give more than one talk on each of those questions. So, the first thing which you said, exteriorized, it is Shakti. Inwardized, the same truth is Shiva. Yes, all very good, but remember, that is Kashmiri Shaivism, that's not Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta will say, why are you complicating all these things? Your consciousness, to you all this is appearing. So, yes, from Kashmiri Shaiva perspective, that's your follow-up was, so is Shakti, if it's the immanent aspect, is it an immanent aspect of Brahman? Is it a permanent aspect of Brahman? That was your question?
Yes, Swamiji.
So Shakti and Shiva, there's a permanent aspect of Shiva in Kashmiri Shaivism. So in Kashmiri Shaivism, the ultimate reality is called Prakasha Vimarsha Swarupa. Prakasha means consciousness, illumination, light. Literal, not physical light like this, light of consciousness, but also self-reflection. Vimarsha. Consciousness and aware of myself as consciousness. So that is the nature of Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is consciousness. And because it is also Shakti, it is also aware of itself as consciousness. It's a beautiful concept. Beautiful concept. But it is a Kashmiri Shaiva concept, not Advaita Vedanta. One has to be clear. Because today and tomorrow and the after, I'm going to stick to the Advaitic interpretation. That's our home tradition, that's why I'm doing it. But the Kashmiri Shaiva tradition is a very beautiful concept, there's no doubt about it. It's extraordinarily deep and very evocative, very poetic. But you notice I'm not saying very logical. There is a book, Advaita Tradition in Indian Philosophy, written by Chandradhar Sharma. So there he says, Advaita, non-dualism, of course, is Advaita Vedanta, one. But also he says Madhyamaka Buddhism of Nagarjuna. And also he says the Yogachara Buddhism, that also is non-dual in one sense, non-duality. Madhyamaka is also non-duality. And Kashmiri Shaivism. So on the Hindu side, two are there, Advaita Vedanta and Kashmiri Shaivism. They are non-dual. And on the Buddhist side, there are two, which are also non-dual, according to Professor Chandradhar Sharma. But why I am mentioning it, at the very end, he has given what would Advaita say about Kashmiri Shaivism. And he has torn it down sharply. See, for example, one, I don't want to criticize, but if you ask me, Brahman and Shakti being as a permanent part of Brahman. Prakasha Vimarsha, consciousness and aware of itself as consciousness. The Advaitin's response immediately will be, you are importing mind into consciousness. Your importing of self-reflection is importing of the mind into consciousness. Face itself, plus reflection of the face. You are importing a mirror. Mirror is not an integral part of my face. So mind, mirror, or whatever you call it, is at the level of appearance, according to Advaita Vedanta. And so self-reflection or Shakti appearing as the universe is Vyavaharika, according to Advaita Vedanta, not part of the ultimate reality. But it's part of the ultimate reality according to Kashmiri Shaivism. And Sri Ramakrishna also considered it part of the ultimate reality. So if you are aware of work of Swami Medhananda, Ayan Maharaj, so he has taken this up and he has worked on this quite a bit. But one must be very precise when one is dealing with different systems. One, to be fair to each system, one must not mix them up. So you are referring to my talk on Divine Mother, which was mostly based on Tantra and Kashmiri Shaivism, not from an Advaitic perspective. Your last question was?
It was a funny one. What would happen if everybody became enlightened? What happens to the Brahman?
And there is a story in Yoga Vasishta about this. Let me just hear the questions and I'll tell you the story and we'll end it today. What is your question?
Maharaj, I'm Rohit Bhattacharya.
Yeah.
My question was, we talked about the Vishwarup Darshan, that after having heard everything, he still needed that.
Yes.
And you said, if you have it, it's overwhelming. But in the previous talk, you talked about the four sort of the stanzas where you sort of detach yourself from the Vishaya.
Mm-hmm.
But the next paragraph after that, he says, a nirahara se deha does that, right? It's only on seeing the param that the desire, the rasopyasa goes away. So now, what is the path for us? We have been detaching, but every once in a while, you do it for a few years, and then it comes back again. Param is nowhere in sight.
Param is not in sight. It is the one to which all sight comes. Yeah. So that is actually see, even the vision of Vishwarupa is not Param. I mentioned the Harvard University class, and people in the class were all confused. So wonderful, 11th chapter. After that, why again 12th chapter? 11th chapter should be the end of Bhagavad Gita. But neither Krishna, nor Arjuna, nor Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhvacharya, none of the commentators give much importance to 11th chapter. If you see Shankara's commentary, little bit here and there he writes and passes over. So mystical experiences, extraordinary experiences, mind-blowing experiences, still not Param. What is Param? Shankaracharya is very clear. Aham asmi Param Brahma. I am that Param Brahma. That realization should come. Then it is not just detachment from the mind. All right, let's hear the question there.
Namaste Swamiji. My name is Vinisha. I just wanted to know if Vedanta has a view on the evolutionary biology perspective of the way science sees the world, where man has been put at the top of the food pyramid.
I'll just answer that in brief. No, man has been put on the top of the pyramid. That's what Vedanta says, religion says. Even evolutionary biology doesn't say it. Man is one product of evolution. One branch of evolution has produced that. We are on top of the pyramid because of our capacities. What does Vedanta say about evolution? Very deep question. Really deep question. I mean, I'll just mention a couple of things here. Monier Williams, first English Sanskrit dictionary, he says these ancient Hindus were Darwinists 1,000 years before Darwin. He says this. Because not that they knew Darwinian evolution. We're not making any ridiculous claim here, a pseudo-scientific claim. No, not at all. It's just that Hinduism is open to the basic idea of evolution. We have no objection to that. Why? Even here, notice Kshetra and Kshetragya. What will Krishna say about evolution? Yes, there is evolution. Evolution in what? Kshetra. The body has evolved from plant bodies to fish bodies to animal bodies to human bodies, maybe something beyond. Minds have also evolved. But Kshetragya consciousness is the same which illumines the same evolving body-mind. So, Darwinian evolution, biological evolution, in principle, I am not at all claiming that we knew the details of natural selection and all of, no, or genetics, no, I don't think so. But in principle, the ancient sages were very open to the idea of evolution. Even the idea of cosmos in Hinduism is it's like a cycle. It comes from a beginning, evolves, and then again goes back to the seed state. And again a cycle of evolution starts. So Vivekananda spoke about evolution and involution, again going back to a seed state. So in principle, Hinduism is very open, accommodative of evolution. We don't have a problem with it. Yoga Sutra actually speaks about evolution. Very interesting. There is a sutra which says, our bodies evolve. It says, nature is evolving higher and higher forms, these bodies. There's a sutra in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Prakritya apuranat, kshetrikavat, there's a sutra. So in Sankhya, Yoga, Vedanta, modern evolutionary biology, we have no objection to it. We have no objection. So that's a great advantage. In the United States, there's a big fight. Creationism, they will not allow you to teach biology, evolution in classroom. But it's because there's a resistance. Because if you teach that as if our religion is gone. Religion is not gone if you teach that. And that's why you don't find that same resistance at all in India. Nobody says if you learn evolutionary biology, if you read Darwin or Neo-Darwinism, if you read genetics, then you will stop believing in Hinduism. Not at all. Not at all. So this much is there. But there's another side to it where evolution has to be bought into religious thinking, into theology, where Aurobindo has done a lot of work. So that is not an area I'm familiar with. I will not speak about it. Yes.
Namaste Swamiji. My name is Kishal. There are two parts to my question. The first part is, I would like to know from your own personal experiences, how does the world look like in the higher state of consciousness? You have spoken about witness consciousness, whereby you're witnessing the world rather than experiencing it as the mind is the body. Is that the same sort of experience as the sense of unity that you have alluded to as well?
I won't speak about my own experience. It's the same as everybody else's experience. But what would it look like to an enlightened person, to a Jivan Mukta? And Arjuna asked this question to Krishna actually, the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So I will not talk about it now. Can we take it up tomorrow? Because these are really good questions. All of these questions are very good. They're very profound questions which require detailed answers. I will not take it up now. Tomorrow maybe.
Could I go to the second part then?
Okay, just let's have the question, yes.
Sure. So you said that if you have experienced, I guess, intense samadhi and you had an experience of mysticism, if that has not lasted, perhaps that is subjective and it wasn't authentic, right?
If it's not transformative.
Not transformative.
No experience lasts. Even samadhi does not last. But is it transformative?
So have people not over the entire history of time experienced these little bouts of mysticism that didn't last, that perhaps just went on for like an hour, and that was sort of their, I guess, initial realization that there's something more than the mind and the body. So that has happened over time, right? So that may not be transformative, but would you then, not doubt how authentic that experience was?
Yes. My personal belief is that a lot of people have mystical experiences. And many cases they are genuine. They may not be deeply transformative also. But there are certain experiences in our lives which we remember. Could be a dream. We forget all our dreams, but one or two we remember throughout our lives. We can't forget it. Like a very fulfilling, deep, spiritual, something very pure, sublime. So it could be dreams, it could be visions, it could be some events in our life which are very deep, very profound, very meaningful. So many people have those. And those are good. Those are glimpses. I would not say that they are not authentic. They are authentic. But we must not stop there. As long as we have problems in this world, as long as we say, I have not been able to overcome suffering, we must go ahead in spiritual life. Sri Ramakrishna always would say, go forward, go forward. Don't stop just because you have had one or two experiences. We'll take it up later.
Thank you.
This question.
Swamiji, my name is Manish. Two quick questions. First one, you describe God is present in 5 different forms, which is the Brahman, the consciousness in each one of us.
Ramanuja's 5.
The 5th one, which you described as the deity in the temple, is different from me from the first 4, because where is the Kshetragya, or the consciousness in the deity in the temple? That's question 1.
Yes.
Question 2 is, if Atma does not die, Atma is conserved, but how does Atma multiply? We are growing in population.
Yeah. Now you can easily imagine, if Krishna says, second one is easy first. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. I am the one consciousness in all the kshetras. If Krishna is the one consciousness in all the kshetras, keep multiplying kshetras, Krishna will be reflected in each of them. How does Atma is conserved? It does not multiply. You have sun in the sky. The more buckets of water you keep out there, you will see a little sun reflected in each of those buckets of water. One sun, 10 buckets of water, you will see 10 little suns in that water. Get an 11th bucket of water, you will see one more 11th sun reflected in that water. So what is multiplying are the kshetras. Consciousness remaining one. So that's the answer. As to the first one, I won't reply now. There's no time at all. Same as like the Tibetan monk told me. A big question, no time. Let's hear your question and we'll wrap it up for tonight.
Jai Shri Krishna Swamiji, and
Yes.
Sabhi ko Jai Shri Krishna. Swamiji, yesterday I purchased a very small book on Gita, and back of it is written, Treasure House of Wisdom. And really, but I'm very sorry to know that in India, this treasure is not presented or explored to the Indian students. This is not as yet included in any syllabus of students, in any standard. Swamiji, is this the cause nowadays relations between parents and children, that this has not been imparted, this Bhagavad Gita has not been imparted in the school age? And that is why this now tense relationship I observed between parents and children. Now, can these parents consider themselves as a kshetrajna against the kshetra, children's kshetra? And if they consider that way, what should be the way? There should be a good relationship between
So, I mean, you've got asked multiple things here. I will not go into the details tonight, but you are right. One might think that in a secular country, how can you teach the Bhagavad Gita? The moment you talk about Bhagavad Gita, they will think it's a religious book belonging to a particular religion. How can you teach that? But I remember Dr. Radhakrishnan, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, he was the chairman of the University Education Commission in 1948 after independence of India. And the University Education Commission, what will be the syllabus for universities in independent India? There he had a whole chapter that the highest and best ideas of all religions, not just Gita or Hinduism, of all religions which are in India, should be given to children. And he had made a syllabus also, first year, second year, third year. He said there is no harm in teaching the highest values. You're not teaching a particular religion. But unfortunately that was never implemented. That chapter was left out by the education ministry when they started making syllabus for. And now, after a long time, not only in India, across the world, we are realizing that without values, without ethics, education is seriously impaired, and we are suffering the consequences of that. So yes, a very practical question. Now, I had promised a story. I will hold on to my promise. I will not tell you the story now. You will have to remember, and tomorrow you will have to catch me. That yesterday you promised to tell us a story. If everybody becomes enlightened, what will happen? So I will tell you that story before I start the class tomorrow. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.